The ex-boyfriend. Have you ever dated an ex-partner again? I know what everyone thinks. The aftermath is never good. I was one of those people who said that too, but like everyone else who gives this advice, obviously I would never follow it if it happened to me, and it did. Trying to get back together with your ex can't always be that disastrous. Sometimes it can even turn out well. How did it work out for me? Let's just say I'm not the best example of this, because the day I tried to get back together with my ex was the worst day of my life. The day I was almost brutally murdered. It all started the day I received a box from Amazon. I still remember as if it was yesterday. A rather short, blonde, light-eyed guy came to deliver a box to me. I remember being surprised, as neither I nor anyone else in my family was expecting anything. The box was not only addressed to my address, it was for me. I remember taking the box to my room, without showing it to anyone at home. When I opened it, I was shocked. Inside the box was a bouquet of flowers, a box of chocolates, and a book. But this was not just any book, it was a book by Edgar Allan Poe, my favorite author. This was not only a gift for me, but it was a gift from Al, my ex. This was the same gift he gave me to convince me to go out on our first date several years ago. I remember liking the gifts, but what struck me most was that he sent them to me on Amazon. You see, he was always an Amazon driver, but he never sent me the packages. He always sent a friend and passed it off as an Amazon shipment. I never understood why he did this. I guess he thought it was a romantic thing. And at a certain point, it worked, because I have to admit that not only did I get excited at the time, but I was excited now. Al was a really nice person. He was tall and brown-eyed. He was fit, as he was a basketball player. We separated after years because the relationship wore out. I admit that I was the one who wanted to break up with him, but after a while, I simply regretted it. Unfortunately, I could never find him again. He changed his phone number and moved. When I tried to contact a mutual friend, he told him to tell me that he didn't want to hear from me anymore. And that was the last time I tried to hear from him. I guess he had regretted that decision, and I couldn't have been happier about it. As the weeks went by, I kept getting boxes from Amazon. They were all delivered by the same guy, so I figured it was probably a friend of Al's. The boxes had letters in them. All of them letters, all of them letters. The boxes had letters in them, all of them saying that we would see each other again soon, and that when and how would be a surprise. After about 2 months, I began to worry. On the other hand, Hal's friend was having a somewhat strange attitude. Before or after handing me a box, he would look at my house through the window, as if looking for me, but also looking at anything he could. Was he doing this to tell Al? Wasn't he going too far? The next time he came, I told him to stop playing. I told him that we both knew that he was Al's friend, and to tell him to finally make the exit. The guy just laughed and told me that I was right, and that he would do everything he could to make him understand. Happy, I locked myself in my house hoping that it had worked, and it really did. A few hours later, I received a message from an unknown number. Once I responded, that number added me to his contacts, and I could see his profile picture. It was Al. The message he sent me said he wanted to meet me at our secret place, that place that only the two of us knew about. The place was on the outskirts of the city, in a small forest that is uninhabited private property. As there are many warning signs, no one dares to enter. So few people know that at the bottom of all the undergrowth and trees, there is a very nice garden. The night I would meet Al again, I was ready. As we had done so many times before, I entered the abandoned area and headed straight for the garden. Al used to arrive a little earlier than I did, so I decided to arrive a few minutes late to keep up the habit. Once I got to the garden, I was surprised not to find Al, but I did find a note in the center of the garden, very visible. The note said to go to the tree where we had our first kiss. Without hesitating twice, I went there. The tree was a few feet away, and I could see that with my back to me. 2 feet were sitting in the tree. I ran towards it smelling Al's rich scent, and there I found him. Al was sitting in the tree, but he was no longer alive. His body was dismembered. His face expressed a terrible horror as if he had been tortured before he died. His eyes were missing, and he no longer had fingers on his hand. In the center of his body was a note. The note read, "Do you want to be my girlfriend again?" In shock, I threw up and fell to the ground, unable to believe what I was seeing. Walking behind me, I heard a laugh and someone walking towards me. I knew that laugh. It was the guy from Amazon, laughing his head off. As soon as he saw me, he apologized for doing something so cruel to me, but he just needed to see my face when I saw Al's dead body. He told me that Al really wanted to come back to me. That Al told him all about me, even showed him pictures. The only problem was that he trusted someone he had only recently met too much. The Amazon driver ended up falling in love with me too, but he wasn't a young teenager who loved to play basketball like Al. He was a perverse man who fantasized about killing someone. After telling me all this, the man pulled out a huge knife and told me that also, unlike Al, his ideal date is to cut me open like a fish and look inside me, stabbing my whole body until I can't feel his arms. I tried to run, but he grabbed my hair and pulled me to the ground before I could get any distance. With a macabre smile and enjoying my fear, the psychopath threw himself on top of me and tried to stab me with the knife. From 1 second to the next, we both found ourselves straining with the knife. Me to save my life, and him to end it. We both start straining for the knife. The Amazon man was very confident, but that smile started to fade. I'm sure he was so confident because I was a woman, but he never took into account that I was also a basketball player. I was always a very athletic person, and he definitely was not. I managed to make him lucky with the knife, but it was way out of our reach. I took a swing at him and moved away as fast as I could, but before I could get away, he grabbed my foot and started biting it brutally. Wounded, I fell back to the ground. I tried to kick him, but nothing worked. He just kept crawling up, tearing chunks out of my feet and calves with his teeth in the process. I screamed in pain as the man reached for the knife once again. No matter how hard I fought, I couldn't save myself from this. I was going to die next to the corpse of the person I loved. I closed my eyes, expecting the worst, until I had to open them again because of all the screams I heard. All around me, a bunch of men were grabbing the Amazon guy and beating him brutally, while another one was coming to save me. I didn't know how, but I was saved. The psycho had thought of everything but one thing. That place was still private property, and even though it was abandoned before, it wasn't anymore. While all this was going on, they were building a small house outside the garden. As everyone was resting, we didn't hear them, but they heard us. After the terrible beating they gave him, Amazon's psychopath was arrested and sentenced to life imprisonment. I ended up in the hospital, and a long time later, I managed to recover from my injuries. I still remember that day and cry. The fact that I survived did not feel like a victory. Every day I think about Al, how much I loved him, and how it destroyed me to see his dismembered corpse in a tree. Years went by, and I still think about it. I may never recover from what I experienced that day, but I have a family, and now I have a son. I have no choice but to go on living and try to be happy. The couple. Have you ever heard the saying that you don't look for tragedy, it just finds you? Well, I am a perfect case of that. This story has no context. It just happened, and that's what keeps me awake at night, because I feel it could happen to me again. I was on the bus chatting to a friend on my cell phone. The bus was pretty empty, and it was late at night. My shift ended up late, and my husband's car was not working. I had thought about taking an Uber, but what the hell? I had taken public transportation too many times to chicken out. As the bus continued to advance, there were fewer and fewer people on it. So many people got off that I started to stare at the few that were left. Among them, 2 people caught my attention. They were two people in robes. They were both ahead of me, so I couldn't see their faces, but I could tell something. They were laughing. They were laughing a lot, but in an unnatural way. They weren't looking at each other. They were just looking straight ahead, laughing. I started to get very nervous. I felt that these people were going to cause trouble, and I could not wait for them to get off. After a few minutes, people went by and by, but they were still there. Now they were not only laughing among themselves without looking at each other, but I could see them looking at me out of the corner of their eyes and laughing even louder than before. Minutes passed, and the fact that they were looking at me became more and more apparent. It got to the point where they weren't even bothering to look at me out of the corner of their eyes. They were both turned around in the bus seat staring at me. The rest of the people on the bus noticed this too. Some who were in the middle of the bus changed places. Others just got off. None of them even considered asking me if everything was ok or telling the driver. It was obvious that I didn't know these people, and if anyone had any doubts, they only needed to see my panicked face to confirm it. I felt very nervous and wanted to get off. But this neighborhood was quite dangerous. At least here I was protected, and these people wouldn't dare do anything with the driver around. I was coming to my stop and got up from my seat. But to my surprise, so did these two people. Everything in their body language gave me to understand that the only reason they had stopped was because I had stopped too. I sat down quickly and confirmed my suspicions. They sat down too. They didn't even bother to make it look casual. I was in danger, and they wanted me to know it. They were making fun of me. They were enjoying my fear. They enjoyed that I could do nothing to defend myself, and that at that moment, I was panicking. I stayed in my seat wondering what to do. My next move was obvious. I asked my husband to wait for me at the terminal station. As long as I was on the bus, nothing could happen to me. The rest of the people kept getting off slowly until it was just us. We were one stop away from the terminal, and to my surprise, both people stood up. Were they just messing with me? They both approached the driver's seat. Both the driver and I thought they were going to get off, but they didn't. One of them pulled out a handkerchief and began to press it in the face of the driver, who had just parked to get the two people out. The driver tried to resist, throwing punches in the air, trying to scream and get out of his seat quickly, but to no avail. In a matter of seconds, he had lost consciousness. That napkin must have had chloroform on it. When he fell asleep, his attacker slowly rested his head on the seat and stroked it before turning around and joining his companion to look back at me. Now it was my turn. Terrified, I watched as these two people began to walk towards me slowly. I ran as fast as I could to the door, and at that moment I just realized what had happened. The driver was passed out. There was no one to open the door for me. The windows of the bus were sealed, and the ones that could be opened were too high and too small for me to get through. I was completely locked in. Knowing my situation, the couple walked slowly and casually toward me, enjoying every moment of panic that passed through my body. Surrendered, I fell into one of the back seats, and crying I asked them not to do anything to me. The people kept walking, ignoring every word I said. Suddenly, I had an idea. I grabbed one of the emergency hammers and pulled it out with all my strength. I started to hit the window, but it was too late. The two terrifying people were standing next to me, laughing their heads off with a demented look in their eyes. The eyes of both people were huge. Veins ran down their faces, and their smiles reached from ear to ear. It was a huge smile, but forced. It was as if they couldn't stop laughing even if they wanted to. Behind their laughter, their eyes reflected a terrible hatred for me. I told them that if they took one more step, I would hit them with a hammer, but the threat didn't work. The man lunged at me and squeezed my eyes with his huge fingers. I had never felt so much pain in my life. It was the most horrible and strange sensation. I felt that my own eyes were about to explode against my brain. I managed to kick and ran as fast as I could, but I was still on the bus. I tried to open my eyes, but the pain was too big, so I just kept the hammer in the air. hoping to hit someone while I listened as the steps of the two assailants came closer and closer. One of the two footsteps accelerated and rushed toward me. It was the woman. The woman rammed me and knocked me to the ground. At that moment, I just wanted to push her away. I lost all will to fight as she, with complete control over me, played with me, digging her long dirty nails into me and dragging them all over my face. As I screamed in pain, I kept hearing the man's footsteps walking slowly toward me. Surely he would be the one to finish me off. Still unable to open my eyes, I heard a glass next to me break, and someone walked up the steps to the front door. His voice was familiar. It was my husband. I heard a fight and people falling. I heard screams, and suddenly, silence. Footsteps approached quickly me. Whose were they? Terrified, I tried to defend myself, until I heard the voice of my husband telling me that we had to leave as soon as possible. I felt him put me on his shoulder and ran as fast as he could. After a few minutes, I realized it was all over. A few hours later, I was better. My eyes still hurt, but I was able to open them. We called the police, and when they went to check the bus, the unthinkable happened. Both psychopaths were still on the bus, laughing nonstop. They were eating the bus driver's body. The police stopped them. They didn't put up any resistance. They just kept on laughing. Once they were arrested, the police asked me to testify, and I told them everything. It was soon learned that these were two dangerous psychopaths who had escaped from a hospital many years before. I am ashamed to admit this, but a part of me is grateful that they killed that poor bus driver. If they hadn't, these people would have gotten away. And who knows what they would have done to me if they had locked me up again. The Hidden Stalker. Hey guys, my name is Gabriel. I always lived with my parents. So when I was finally able to move out on my own at the age of 26, I expected it to be perfect. I knew I was going to face some obstacles, like everyone else. What I didn't know was that I would experience something that no one else experiences when moving out on their own. A situation that almost ended my life. It all started after the move. I spent the day tidying up with the help of my parents. When they left in the evening and I had everything settled, I sat down in my new apartment to watch TV and enjoy my peace and quiet. This was fantastic. It was everything I had ever wanted. But problems were not long in coming. During the night, after going to sleep, I woke up to a strange sound in front of me. When I opened my eyes, there was a silhouette in front of me. Its silhouette was all dark. I could not recognize if it was a man, a woman, or even a human. Realizing I was looking at him, the shadow faded into the darkness, as if it had never been there. I heard noises in the dining room, so I ran in desperation and turned on the light. But there was no one there. Something strange was going on. I didn't hear the door open or close. It was even locked. I looked at the clock, and it was already past midnight. Had it been a nightmare? After inspecting the house, I went to sleep as I did every night. The next few days passed very slowly. Every night I woke up after midnight. I would say it was a coincidence, but I was sure I heard a strange noise in the kitchen. When I inspected it the next day, I noticed that many things changed. There was a terrible smell coming from the refrigerator, from which food was missing. Many other things looked rotten or tasted very strange, and the carpet smelled as if someone had died on it. After that, I installed several security cameras in my house. Although I had not seen that silhouette in my room again, I suspected that someone might be in the house. But how? The door didn't look forced. No one was hiding, and the exit was locked from the inside. After I set up the cameras, I went to bed, and the next day, I saw the cameras. Nothing had happened. This time, I hadn't woken up, and nothing strange had happened in the kitchen. This had stopped by any chance. After the day was over, I went to sleep peacefully, praying that all this was over. I went to sleep peacefully, hoping it would be another uneventful night. But something woke me up. When I opened my eyes, my head was turned towards the clock. Again, it was midnight. I thought about turning over to see what it was that had awakened me, but I didn't want to. I was terrified, paralyzed with fear. Not because of the noise that I had been hearing almost every night. This time it wasn't that noise that woke me up, but the sensation of something warm bouncing against the back of my neck. Someone was on the bed, behind me, and his breath made every part of my skin bristle. I asked him who he was. I asked him what he wanted, but the person just stood there, staring at me, stalking me. Suddenly, I felt cold hands touch my face and cover my eyes. Those fingers were long and wrinkled. Instantly, they applied pressure on my face, tearing me. I used all my strength to get out of there, jumping off the bed. I looked at the attacker in my bed and was perplexed. It was empty. Was it a ghost? Was I going crazy? I was about to run to turn on the light, but a hand came out from under the bed and grabbed my feet, throwing me to the floor and dragging me under the bed. This was no ghost. When I got out of bed, my attacker quickly jumped in and waited for the moment to attack me. And I, like an innocent child, fell into the trap. After crawling under the bed without difficulty, I could see nothing. It was all dark, and whoever had dragged me did not hesitate to attack me as soon as he had the chance. While I was unable to defend myself, this person dug his long, sharp nails into me and began to cut my face. More than nails, they looked like knives. I felt how the blood fell from my house and how the nails in the darkness were looking for my eyes. And they were getting closer and closer. I managed to hit whatever was attacking me. And from one moment to the next, it was all over. That person got out of bed and ran away. I went after the invader, but when I got to the dining room, he was gone again. I turned on the lights and looked everywhere. Under the table, in the bathroom, hidden among the furniture. There was no one there. How was this possible? I ran out of the house in my underwear and terrified. I stood on the stairs. In that place, there was light. Neighbors in their rooms, and only one way. Whoever is in my house could not escape, not without my seeing him. Midnight passed quickly, and as soon as I met the apartment manager, I told him everything that happened, and together, we called the police and told everything about this stalker. When they arrived in the morning, they went through the whole apartment, and we found nothing. If it wasn't for all the blood and wounds on my face, they would have thought I was crazy. But there was no one in my house. It all ended up as a big unsolved mystery. And just like the previous nights, I was at the disposal of this person who could come back at night and kill me without even waking me up. When the cops left, I opened the fridge looking for something to eat. But it was empty and the strange smell had returned to the carpets. Something had happened during the night. I quickly ran to the security cameras and started looking at them. And that's when I found the culprit. While I was gone, a strange woman in a nightgown was eating everything in the refrigerator. She did not only stole from me, but spat on all the food and with a maniacal smile, cut her finger and filled everything that could be eaten with her blood. After finishing with my food, the lady continued to have fun shamelessly. She approached the carpet and started to pee on it. After this came the most interesting part of the video. The lady didn't escape through the door. She went into the ventilation duct. I didn't even know that was open. I never thought I'd look there. I paused the video and slowly made my way toward the duct. The most logical decision was to leave, run away and call the police again. I walked slowly to the exit, and in the middle of the way, I looked very carefully at the ventilation duct, and something caught my attention. From a distance, it looked empty. I let curiosity get the better of me and I approached. I still didn't see anyone. I pulled open the barred door to the duct, and to my surprise, it was empty. There was old food and some things from my refrigerator, but the lady was gone. Suddenly, I felt footsteps running behind me, and when I turned around, the lady in the camisole was running after me with a knife. Faced with the attack, I managed to react quickly and stopped her hand. The knife was heading violently toward my eyes, just like that day under the bed. We both began to struggle. For a very skinny and malnourished person, He had impressive superhuman strength. I threw a kick that knocked her back and ran for the door, but in one leap, she reached my ankle and pierced it with her knife. I fell down in pain, but after the jump, she was also on the floor. I kicked her in the face with my other foot as hard as I could while she drove her knife deeper and deeper into my other foot until one of my kicks seemed to hit her in the eyes. I took that moment to leap for the door and fell back to the floor. I crawled all over the apartment screaming. Behind me, the lady was with the knife in her hand, hitting the air with her knife while covering her eyes from the pain. I crawled faster, but she was about to catch up with me. When I had her next to me, several neighbors rushed towards her, pulled the knife out of her hand, and restrained her. The police arrived quickly and took her away. On the other hand, I was rushed to the hospital. Even though I only got cuts on my foot, I had lost a lot of blood. I felt like I was going to faint. When it was all over, I started talking to the people in the apartment, and they all told me the same thing. This lady had already appeared around the place. They used to see her at night walking the halls. They thought she was a neighbor, but they had never seen her. After that, I could never have the peace I wanted so much. Every time I'm at home, I'm scared, constantly on the lookout for someone hiding. It may seem strange, but can you blame me for being scared? After that day, it was a miracle that I'm still alive.